Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, the good work never ends, and if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm assuming you do because you're listening to us right now. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can find us over at Amazon, Apple, Spotify, Google. It's all good. And plus, you can head on over to our In the Seats YouTube channel where we have every single one of our episodes archived, and give us a like and subscribe there as well. Plus, you can find us on the social media, as the kids call it, over at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of updates. And plus, we're on the TikTok for the hell of it. And also, and finally, most importantly, please come over to In the Seats, intheseats.ca, and, give us a read, give us a look, because we talk about film, television, the moving image in general, because that's what we love to write about and talk about it, and we love it when you come and read about it. So please stop on by. You've got a tired one from me today, because we are in the throes of the Toronto International Film Festival, the thing that we love so very much. It is insanity, but it is us consuming as much cinema as humanly possible. And, we couldn't be happier, quite frankly. But on this one, we're switching it up a little bit. But what we're doing is we're looking at... actually, we're talking to someone from another podcast. We were talking about the Firecracker Department, and they're having a big award ceremony tomorrow during TIFF, which takes place on Sunday, September 12th, because I'm recording this on Saturday, September 11th. You go to the Firecracker Department's Facebook. The podcast is called the Firecracker Department, and you go to their Facebook page for this red carpet and awards ceremony. And what we did is we had the distinct pleasure of talking with Firecracker Department founder Naomi Snieckus and the winner of this year's 2021 Blaze Award to screenwriter, author, and advocate, and an Emmy Award winning Joe Vannicola. And we talked about just the importance of the Blaze Award and why it's there, and because the Firecracker Department in general supports women and non-binary artists in the arts and entertainment community, and this Blaze Award is a real shining example of that with the work that Joe has been doing. And we talk about that, and we talk about just sort of artistry in general and the importance of diversity and putting, as many positive things as we can out there in the universe. And it's just talking with Joe and talking with Naomi was a absolute pleasure. And there needs to be more Joes, and there needs to be more Naomis out there in the world in this business, because it can be a hard business. But I definitely think that things like this award and things like the Firecracker Department podcast, which, like I said, supports women and non-binary artists in the entertainment industry by giving them platforms and creating for giving an opportunity for voices to be heard. It's a fantastic thing. And just to put it in perspective, previous people who have won the Blaze Award have been people like actress, comedian, writer Michelle Buteau, and the one and only Jan Arden. So Joe is in some pretty rarefied air, but we had a real fun and interesting talk with Naomi and Joe, and I hope you enjoy it, because I certainly know that I did. And definitely go to the Firecracker Department's Facebook page just to check out the virtual red carpet right before their brunch, which takes place right before their brunch, and the award ceremony. But like I said, enjoy our talk. Obviously, thank you both for the time today. I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh. Our pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks, Dave.
Mine too. Thank you.
Now, I guess my first question is for you, Naomi, because I had heard of Firecracker Department. I knew it was sort of it was in my inbox a lot, but I never quite understood what it was. Can you sort of give me sort of the origins of, I guess, Firecracker Department and the award as well.
Yeah. So Firecracker Department, it started as a podcast because I had a couple of needs. I needed to meet people like Joe and have further discussions that weren't just like at parties where you're like, how's it going, Joe? Nice to see you. Bye bye bye. I
Right.
wanted to like, what makes you excited? What makes your heart sing? I wanted to find out all those things in a longer discussion. And then Trump got elected and the Dr. Ford trials happened and I got real ragey.
Yeah.
And that's not something that Sneeckus is used to.
I think we all got a little ragey.
Yeah, but like I got like, I mean, I speak myself in the third person, which I never do, but I was like, what's going on? Something's happening. I started like tweeting things that I was like angry about. I think Trump had an interview about Dr. Ford that made me just like my head exploded. And I thought I can either be ragey online and like put out messages of rage, which isn't really my brand, who's kidding who, or I could like shine a light on Firecracker Department and make it so bright that it outshines the stuff that I'm rageful about. So it became this community, and the community now is like, I feel like it's like some sort of amusement park where there's like the writing department ride and the script department ride and the social justice and the mentorship department and the comedy department ride. And then 3 years ago, we had our first TIFF party, which was still in person. And it became such a pillar of what we believe in, because the party was not a place, it was a place for everyone, first of all. It didn't matter if you had just started your career or just, I was going to say just ending your career, but just had a career that was established. Like it was great. Like you'd had folks that were just new to the acting community, but then like Jan Arden and Danny Kind and Amanda Brugel were there. Like it was just a great, and everybody was equal. And we talked I gave a speech about like making sure that if anybody's on their phone, it means that they're uncomfortable. So get them into a conversation, find out what they're working on. So it became like a really great, I guess like a pillar of what we believe in. And then we bumped it up to 11 by including a Blaze Award. So the Blaze Award goes to somebody who is dedicated to not only their career and making their career shine in a level of high integrity and heart and joy, but also through their community. So the first year went to Jan Arden because Jan's Jan Arden, my goodness. And then the next year it went to Michelle Buteau, who's an amazing comedian in the States, and also not only like a mother of two and a podcaster, and she's written a book. And it's just people that are going above and beyond their career. So, I mean, it's a no-brainer that we're going to give this year to Joe Vannicola, because as I said to Joe, I said, I'm taking so many pages out of Joe Vannicola book, not her actual book. That would be wrong to rip up a book, but like her life book that she's probably going to be left with like a leaflet, because I think that they have so many things to offer.
Now, I guess, Joe, my next question is for you. How does it feel to sort of get this? Because, I mean, this feels very much like something that's not just about doing good work, but trying to sort of, I guess, uplift your community while you're doing good work.
I think, listening to Naomi speak too, I'll answer the question, but listening to Naomi speak, I feel like, that energy is about trying to come together with other people to create community and have exchanges that are rooted in real life. And because we're so disconnected as artists, and oftentimes we're in competition, we don't actually spend that time talking and getting to know each other. And how could we make our lives better? And how could we improve the culture? And I think that's what we're starting to do. And I think the Me Too movement kind of cracked that open a little bit for women, and certainly the Trump era. And, but I like to say that this goes back centuries and of course decades, women and queer people and men as well, people of color, Black Lives Matter, go back to civil rights, go back to the right to vote. There's so many icons who came before us. And so I often feel like, oh, what have I done to deserve these awards? I'm not sure. However, I feel also very grateful, but it also continues to inspire me to want to always keep doing more, because something is working. And I don't do the activism in my life to receive recognition or awards. I do it because I have to do it. I feel like I have to, like my life depends on it. And like the lives of those who come after me, it depend on my doing this work, whether it's a little bit or a lot or whatever that is. I think it's imperative for me to give my life to making the world a better place as part of my craft. So
Well,
I
that's a
don't know if I
beautiful
answered
thing.
your question.
You did. No, I mean, and that's a beautiful thing. And I mean, I really focus back just on just sort of the idea of trying to build community, because especially in the entertainment business, it is so combative and it is so toxic. It is so built on pushing someone down to build yourself up. When the reality is, when you look at it, if one of us does well, guess what? We're all doing a little bit better at the same time. Why do you think, I mean, from both your perspectives, why do you think we've lost that sort of ability to uplift rather than, because I mean, is it just because putting people down is easier?
I don't know that we've been taught to uplift. And
Yeah.
I think, there's so much that we vilify, not even in our industry, but even as children, as we grow up, people, they don't like gay people, or they learn bad words associated with people who are queer, or, people who look different or behave different, or different abilities or classes and races. And there's this thing that gets handed down by parents and even educators that is sometimes conscious and direct and specific, or it's even unconscious, the lessons we've learned and we don't know that we're repeating. And so I think that you get a group of individuals from all walks of life in an industry together that's very competitive, and we're all going for the same piece of money, or trying to get to the top, and people don't learn. We haven't learned to be kind to each other and bring each other along for the ride. We have been taught to be aggressive and mean. And I think if you're a woman and non-binary or trans or queer, we've been taught to compete with each other in a different way that men haven't, and we've been denigrated by men and internalized a lot of those messages while we grew up. And so I think it's easy for people to internalize and externalize that to our own gender and our own whatever the issues are. But I think that we're blowing that up, and we're becoming more aware and more conscious of our behaviors and how to be better with each other, how to treat each other with dignity and respect and help each other up. And I think that's my focus, moving forward. And I think that's the focus of the Firecracker Department, which I really appreciate, is that, it's exactly what Naomi said to begin with. It's about creating community. It's about providing a space for women and non-binary and queer people to work together and to inspire each other, create art, story, comedy, whatever it is, and just do the best we can. And I hope that we end this culture of sort of toxic sort of masculinity and cruelty.
Yeah, what she said. Oops, what they said. Sorry. Yes, what they said. Listen, I also want to add to that. Like, I think that we're not all bad. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of folks that do practice that. But the tricky part is that we all want to do this. We all want to do the job that we are passionate about. And there's not a lot going on. So that's why you have to create your own work, is because that's the way you can guarantee yourself a job. But I think that we're all in a world where competition is considered to be negative. And why don't we just kind of admit it? Why don't we just go, you know what? I'm kind of competitive. I want to work all the time. I love my job.
Yeah.
And it's not possible. I just think we can do it a little bit more, I don't know, maybe graciously.
How do you both think sort of, I mean, I guess in past recent years, because we've had such a boom towards streaming and a boom towards our entertainment being consumed digital, which has allowed for more kinds of content to be put out there. How do you think that sort of creative boom has allowed, I guess, maybe sort of the openness that Joe, you were talking about a little bit earlier, just in terms of being able to have different voices out there and for everyone to sort of support each other, as opposed to like we were saying before, one versus the other. But let's like you say, let's have competition be a positive thing.
Yeah, I mean, for me also, when I think of the LGBTQ2 plus, goes on and on, that community, queer, when I think of the queer community, a lot of us grew up not knowing that it was okay to be queer, or that there were people like us. And we're at a stage where it's beyond just representing. We really want authentic, deep stories about all kinds of things. And that's what we're looking for, right? And I think when you grow up not seeing yourself and knowing anything about yourself, there's a void, and it's so painful. And to have to try to find community when you grow up in a culture that doesn't really want you or want you to have rights or denigrates your reality or ignores your reality. It's very, very hard to get there and to be at a place where you're comfortable, confident, have joy, can deal with the homophobia, all of those things. And so, I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure. I've gotten off track. However, my point is that that's what I want more of. I want us to do more of that for each other. So if we create more queer content, content for people of color and content for women and non-binary and trans people and people with disabilities, I mean, it goes on and on and on, but the more we have, the better we get as human beings and as artists. And I think that's the thing, is that we have to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at it selfishly. It's going to make you better. If we can all sort of exercise these muscles. But it is like, what I saw the other day in a casting, it said like open, how sometimes it'll say open to all ethnicities. And now it's one said open to all ethnicities and physical abilities or something. And I was like, oh, great. Like they're all muscles. We're not used to like, look, I messed up your pronouns, but we're trying to adjust to a new world. And the more we exercise our muscles and the more we think outside the box with casting, with collaboration, with everything, we're going to be better off. Gosh, I want to have a world where I'm like hanging out with, Joe and every other person that isn't like me, because I'm going to learn something from it.
I agree, Naomi. I feel like, we go back to the Being Erica days, I think, or even before that, probably some voice cartoon or gig actually. Yeah. And I always wondered about you, but there's that thing where you don't really get to know somebody sometimes, and you don't ask questions and engage in a personal connection because you're just, you just pass by each other in hallways or sets. And this is a great surprise to discover more about you as a human being.
You and me both, my friend. I know, yeah, Dave. I mean, I'm so glad you're here, but I mean, it's just really an opportunity for us to hang out.
Talking, it's fine. But I mean, I guess that leads into something else, though, because I mean, I'm kind of curious. I mean, especially in recent years, we have kind of focused on the pronoun, as it were, when it comes to stories. At the end of the day, will we is the goal of being better when we focus on Naomi, Joe, and David as opposed to she, they, he?
What do you mean?
Well, in terms of in terms of telling stories. Like I want to learn more about Naomi. I want to learn more about Joe. I want to learn more about David. Not necessarily how they identify about themselves, but who they are as people.
Yeah, I think for me, it isn't a test. So whether or not you remember to say they, isn't really the issue. The issue for me is, does this person respect me? Is this person trying?
Right.
That's all. Like, you don't have to get everything. I don't get everything all the time. I make mistakes all the time when it comes to pronouns and gender expression stuff, because I'm learning too. I mean, we all are. And some of us are a little, our brains are a little faster than others because it also involves language and writing and all these things that we all get confused about. But it isn't that. That's the surface in some way. What's beneath that is, do you respect me? Do you have, will you treat me with dignity? Will you try better? Will you try harder? And can we exchange hearts? And will you listen to me? And I will listen to you. And will I listen to you? And I think the common root is we all want to be loved. We all want to be listened to. We all want to share our stories. We all want to be seen. I mean, it's not a bad thing to want those very basic human things. It's just that we don't say those things.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to cry too.
I know.
I'm so sorry.
I just think, I mean, if your goal is to be seen, like my need, gosh, it doesn't even matter what my needs are, but like my need to say the correct pronouns isn't to be clever. It's to make you feel like the best you can around me. Like, that's all. I want people to come over, like be around me and be like, it's a treat hanging out with Naomi, because whenever I'm with her, she makes me feel great. And it's the same, like, if somebody comes over to my house, I want them to feel good about being in my home. And same with the World of Firecracker Department. I want everybody in this vicinity to feel like they can be the most themselves, that then they can risk, then you can do things. Because if your feet on the ground, you can jump as high as you want. You don't have to worry about, I don't know, am I looking the right way? Am I behaving the right way? You can just be yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not looking for you to always, make a mistake around my pronouns so that I could say, hey, you didn't, like, I don't give a fuck about that. I mean, excuse, I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
I mean,
Go ahead.
I know that it's an important piece of identity, but it's not the focus, right?
Yeah.
The focus is way deeper. But I think people get caught up in all that. And I'm saying it's much deeper. And we're not used to being deep with each other, I think, as a rule. We're not used to that. And so I would like for more of that to happen, because I do think that we'll make the world better the more we do that. And it's okay to make mistakes. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like if I can trust, if you can trust me and I can trust you, it's okay if you say the wrong word or maybe don't get something around transphobia or homophobia or misogyny or whatever it is, because we can discuss it and know that there's a mutual understanding of respect. And that's what I think, if we can get there as a people, all of us, then we'll be able to maybe make this world work for us. And I think we're on the precipice. We're on something, we're on a very thin line around the world right now for multiple reasons. But I just have to try to remain hopeful that, the more we do and the more we try, and the better, from the right space or heart space, hopefully the better, we'll make it.
Kind of exciting.
That sounds so traumatic, doesn't it?
No, it's exciting. Like, I've had way more interesting discussions with people that are brave enough to talk about, I don't know, whatever their insecurities are around pronouns or gender identification. Like, people that normally we talk about the weather, sports, and movies. So really, who's getting who, just movies and weather, because I don't know anything about sports. But like, those discussions are so interesting. They're so exciting to have a discussion with somebody about, like, he didn't understand why it was a big deal. And it was great. Thanks for having this discussion with me. And if I get a chance to use, like, that kind of platform to, like, challenge somebody, all the better. But it's fun. This is a fun world we're living in.
Yeah. And then how do we turn that into our art? And how do we create story from all of this stuff? And how do we make it exciting and interesting and, all those things, right?
Which is what you're doing, Joe.
I don't know. I'm trying. what you're doing too, Naomi.
I know, we're trying.
Well, Dave.
But I mean, I think that kind of leads into my next question, because I mean, for you, Naomi, I'm kind of curious just in terms of, I guess, centering it around TIFF, because on one end, obviously there's going to be so many voices and so many different things going on. But after talking to you both, even now, just for a few minutes, it feels like the perfect place to sort of have the eyes on and have that kind of discussion, because it is such a conflux of talent in our industry who are basically all in the same place at the same time.
Yeah. I think this is an opportunity. Like, when we were thinking about throwing a TIFF party, it was an opportunity to do things the way I wanted to do things. Like, I always play the game with a lot of, like, my podcast guests of, when you have your own show, ... what is it going to be? So when I have my own show, it's going to be like, people are going to be nice to each other. We're going to meditate for 3 minutes at the top of every day with the crew. Booms are going to go down. We're going to have a dance break at 2 p.m. We're going to do things the way I want to do things. So in the TIFF party world, like, I mean, I love TIFF because it's community. I don't always love the parties. I think there's a bit of exclusivity about parties that really makes me uncomfortable. And it makes me sad. It makes me sad to hear people can't get into parties. And we're not talking about films anymore. We're just talking about parties. That all thing makes me kind of cringe. So I'm like, well, what do we want to do here? We want to come together. Everybody's welcome. And we're going to have some mimosas and coffee and lovely pastries. And it's going to be fun. And we're going to talk about what you're working on, like, so that you go around, and if you have nothing to say, what are you working on and how can I help? Because it'll lead to something interesting. So if you have problems with, like, how a set's being run or with how a party's being run, you throw your own party.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I mean, it's one of those things, like, even on my end of the coin, like, I can tell you so many stories of, people being upset that they lined up for Joker or this, that, or the other, or not being able to get in such and such a party. Whereas it's like, oh, Dave, where were you? It's like, no, I was at some weird Icelandic film that no one's heard of.
Right.
Isn't that the point?
Right.
Isn't why we're supposed to?
Isn't it called Toronto International Film Festival, not a party festival?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's called a festival.
Well, it is the festival of festivals.
The festival of festivals.
We did a thing a couple of years, well, actually the year before COVID, and we donated flip-flops to everybody at the women's the WIFT party. so that instead of talking about how badly their feet hurt, we can talk about movies. Because I just got so sick of people like, oh, my feet. I'm like, but what movie did you see? I'm like, I can't see any movies. I gotta go home. My feet hurt. So I think you're right. I think there has to be a turn into like the movie centric.
Unless you're non-binary or trans or butch, and then you just wear really sensible shoes anyway.
I mean, come on, you've got it right. But then I was also talking to a guy, and he was like, "These shoes hurt me," and I'm like, "You're allowed to have shoes that are comfortable." I mean, I've just started wearing boots and runners and flip flops, and that's it.
It's funny.
And I mean, I'm kind of curious from both your perspectives, because at least for me, as the person who's out there watching everything, I've seen such a shift in Canadian storytelling, and just in terms of how open we are to different ideas and trying to tell a multitude of different kind of stories. And I'm kind of curious from both your perspectives, how do you think the Canadian film industry is evolving to sort of tell more, I guess, maybe dynamic stories?
Naomi, want to go first?
I was really looking at you for that, Joe. I don't know if I can comment on that. How are they making more dynamic stories? I mean, weren't we always making dynamic stories? I can't imagine anybody's going to make a movie that they didn't think was dynamic.
No, but I mean, again, like, we did have a bit of a period where we were a little too leaning into sort of and I mean, I don't want to throw certain Canadian productions under the bus, where we were trying to be a little too beachcombery or a little too corner gassy, where we were sort of name dropping where we were, referencing this town in Saskatoon kind of thing, and just telling stories as opposed to trying to be overtly Canadian with our stories, if that makes more sense.
I mean, for me, it's complex because, in the back of my head, I'm always thinking about other things. I'm thinking about the lives of girls and women being,
Right.
Quite frankly, like arm candy of a male character, which has happened for decades, and queer people being non-existent. And when they are existent, it's tokenism or it's let's kill the gays. And I mean, there's all these tropes and decades of junk that we've all had to live with, absorb, and take in as part of the stories that we've been told, even in Canadian film as well. So I think there's a bigger picture to that, or a bigger idea, or a bigger conversation, I should say, about that question. And I wasn't sure which part to focus on, so there's white Canadiana and the beachcombers and all those things, which is also very white and straight. And then there's, the stories that have never been told by women, people of color, queer people, Indigenous people, those are the missing pieces. And I think once we're less constrained, when the box opens up and the walls crumble around all this stuff, I think we will be much more dynamic. And I think we're starting to get there. I think that's the place that we're all trying to go, but we're just trying to find our way. And it's definitely a complex place, isn't it?
It's just practice though, right? Like, isn't it just like practice the things you want to see, practice, like you said a great thing, Joe, in our script department event, we were talking about like challenging casting, and I think we were talking about having like people, South Asian or Asian actors play cowboys, and like what that would change with casting. And you're like, well, what about instead of the love story being a woman and a man, it could be two men or same gender. And I was like, that would be such a great note in like the writing room to like, hey, what happens? What happens if you just tilt it a little bit? And so suddenly casting isn't gender centric. It's just people centric. I'm looking for somebody that holds this essence, and it can be male, female, because we're all okay to love each other. Hey, alert, FYI. Yeah,
it will be exciting when those casting forms and breakdowns include sexual identity and everything else as well, because that is not part of that list, right? Because we're excluded because of it's so focused on heterosexual content and relationships that they wouldn't add that, or else it might open the floodgates a little bit, perhaps.
It's just going to say like person, another person, and another person. And I'll be like, oh my gosh, I have so many auditions for person, and person.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Just humans auditioning.
So is there a breakthrough moment for that coming, or do you think it's just a question of chipping away at the wall and just sort of is there a way to sort of like punch through, or is it just a question of inch by inch, crumb by crumb, just tearing down sort of those barriers and making it, like you say, person casting as opposed to male casting or female casting or anything else in between casting?
For me, I think it depends on where the power lies as well, right? You have to have the people at the top, producers, the networks, the funders, the government. I mean, there are lots of layers to this. It's not just let's make a movie.
Right.
The writer, the director, all those people. That the thinking has to shift in the minds of everybody who has
Collectively,
power and
yeah.
control. And so artists are often at the bottom of that ladder. And so I think if we can break the ladder, maybe it will, we will get there. But I do think it will take time. I think, like most things that happen, change is unfortunately a little bit slow, but I do believe that change happens, and hopefully it will happen faster, just like it has been over the last few years. I think people are really waking up for real, but where it goes, I don't know. How long it takes, I don't know.
We just have to all do it. We can't leave it up to Joe. I know they're powerful. I know they can do anything, but it can't be all up to Joe.
Or Naomi, or you, Dave.
No, I think we could leave it up to Dave.
Let's leave it there. Dave. Yeah.
There's the white guy in the room.
We'll leave it up to the white guy. Yeah. I don't know that that's worked historically. I don't know.
Never mind, Z's. I take it back.
Yeah, to be fair, our white guys do not have the best track record in the world. So I should bow out of this one. Now, I'm curious, just to start putting a bow on this, because we're obviously all in the entertainment industry, and I mean, we're working to make change in the entertainment industry, and this is how we make change, through our art, or either behind the scenes or in front of the camera. I'm kind of curious, can you both pick like a play or a movie or a show that you saw that made you want to make change, that sort of spurred you on to do something maybe sort of greater than yourself inside the industry or outside the industry even?
I mean, for me, I was a child activist. So I was marching in the streets when I was 10 and 14 and 15 and 16. So my training came from, frontline advocacy and reading words of people like, Adrienne Rich, Maya Angelou, Audre Lorde, civil rights activists, and trying to find hope and inspiration as a young person, because I had a really hard life. So for me, I kept trying to take in as much inspiration from great people that I could think of to inspire me. Movies more recently, like or plays like Angels in America, or there's so many beautiful poets and authors and filmmakers and artists, and I try to soak up as much of all that as I can, just to be a better artist and a better human.
I don't know. That's really tricky. I certainly didn't read Maya Angelou as a child. I know that much. And I missed out, but I read it as an adult. I think my instincts would say something like work in progress, but not necessarily because of the storylines that they are coming up with, because it's just such beautiful, heartbreakingly funny comedy. But it's the way that crew works together. And like, I had a chance to talk to the crew, and they just work in such a level of kindness that makes sense to me. Like, I feel like if we can kind of go back to like our primary school days, and if we can just be like, the first year of school, you're just going to learn kindness. That's all. You're not going to worry about reading, writing, arithmetic, which would be fine with me. But you just learn, like, let's just worry about kindness, because then it'll reverberate to everything else. So I will say work in progress really, really jazzes me. And I will also say, like, I love seeing, something like what you were talking about, Joe. I love seeing like things like a same gender relationship without speaking of that same gender relationship. It's just a relationship. Or like, I remember seeing a TV show, and it happened to have like a trans person in like working as a barista, or a barista. Somebody making coffee. So like, just having that, but without speaking of it, like, that really excites me, because it stops like putting like a definition on those folks, but it becomes our world, in the same way that you see like Indigenous folks in storylines that don't have anything to do with the challenges of being from an Indigenous community, or like anything about it. It just happens to be they're Indigenous. So I get really excited when I see shows like that.
Yeah, I think that, it's interesting, because I think that that's really true. And I think a lot of us say that, but then there's the other side of that too, which is we have to make sure that the reality of the experience of being, queer or trans or non-binary is not lost also in this kind of mainstream, I would say, hope to have us all in story or on film or on the page. But how do we create like three-dimensional, full, realized characters? And I think that comes from really knowing who you're writing about. And so, that you can have that trans person serving coffee, but maybe there's a lesbian who's got a deeper storyline, and along with that straight person and that Black person and the Indigenous person. It's not just, yes, we're all there, but what is the truth of our experience, and how do we put that in a story in a way that's not clunk?
Mm-hmm. See, I just want to hang out with you all the time. My brain just goes pew pew.
And I mean, I think that's the real sort of important thing to sort of focus on, because there has been so much entertainment in the past that, like you say, Joe, has gone clunk, and people have tuned out because of the clunk. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this might be a weird through line, but bear with me. Last question. Like, at least from my perspective, when I look at sort of the history of entertainment and I look at the history of social activism, the people who have success in trying to actually do something and get things moving forward in a positive way are the people who have done their homework and understand sort of the history that came before it. But at the same time, we lose a lot of that, and that doesn't like the past doesn't necessarily seem to get enough focus. And I'm kind of curious, from both your perspectives, how do you think we sort of remind people that they still need to do their homework?
I think we create the stories that allows for that dialogue to even be present, or for a visual to inspire somebody, or even make the light bulb go off, because I feel like there are multiple ways to do that. We just, like you're saying, have to do the homework and have to understand the history of people, of women, of Indigenous people, of queer people, trans people, and to really delve deep and create the community with other artists and writers, so that we can get in a space together and figure out, okay, how do we make this piece, and how do we present it to the world in a way that multiple layers and levels of consciousness or story get in. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know. I was never very good at homework, so you couldn't really make me do homework ever. Like, that's like saying, how can you make Naomi do more homework? I'd be like, offer me treats if I do it. So I don't know. Maybe it's like, I don't know. I think that resources, like, I think accessibility, I think like having discussions like this where we make mistakes and accept them and move on as human beings. I think like having organizations that you are in charge of, so that you can say like, hey, come at me with questions. I don't know all the answers, but we'll figure it out. I think that kind of thing, more platforms of awkward mistakes where you could just figure things out all together, maybe. Because I think there's a lot of people that need to do homework but don't know where to even start. And there's a thing called Google. I don't want to blow your minds, but I think that like folks don't even know where to start. And I think discussions really, really help. So having like, that discussion of why that person has changed their pronouns. I don't know, but I'll tell you what, like we can find somebody who can speak about it, and then let's have that discussion. So I don't know, let's get awkward.
Well, hey, you know what? I think that's a great note to end on, because let's get awkward. I mean, Naomi, thank you for, existing, and thank you for the work, and thank you for giving this award to this fantastic person who is doing great work behind and in front of the camera. And
thank you both, by the way. Thank you, Naomi.
Awkward conversation,
right? No, we are so lucky, Joe. Like, I'm just so thrilled, and I have to also share with you when Winnie Wong, who's our the head producer of our podcast and our publicist, she said, let's go and tell Joe together. And we told Joe, and Joe was like, shouldn't you be giving this to somebody from the BIPOC community? That's the reaction of somebody receiving the award with like the right heart. Because we are aware, and we are aware of like the BIPOC representation. Michelle Buteau got it last year. Yeah. We're working through it. But you're just the bee's knees, Joe.
Well, listen, thank you. I'm very grateful, and as I said, it keeps inspiring me to do more. So the more good comes in, the more I want to give. So I think it's a great circle. So thank you both, and thank you, Dave.
And I think you're both swell, and I'm just happy I could be here.
No.
Thanks for giving us a reason to hang out, Dave.
All right. Well, thanks a lot.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.